You are listening to Know You're Crazy. My name is Susan Denee. We all have crazy. What separates us is how we choose to deal with it. I'm going to be delivering engaging and actionable tools to own your crazy, treat your crazy, and turn it into your own superpower. I hope that you walk away from this show feeling the power and strength within you. And never forget to enjoy your journey because you are worth it. Hey everyone, welcome to the Know You're Crazy talk show. My name is Susan Denee, and you are listening to Emotional Recovery in the Raw. You know, we have 4 key areas in our life. We have our health, we have our finances, our relationships, and our career. Usually one of those areas in our life has a tendency to test us every now and then. I'm really excited about today's show because we are going to be talking about sugar addiction. Joining me today is an expert in this area. So, before I introduce her, though, I'm going to ask you a few questions. Have you ever asked yourself, am I addicted to sugar? Do you truly understand how it impacts your body, specifically your brain? Do you find you can't stop eating foods that are high in sugar? Do you feel like you are a food addict? Well, if any of that resonates with you, then you are in for quite the show. Anna Fruehling is going to be a godsend for you today. She is a recovering addict with 33 years clean. When she realized sugar acts as a gateway drug, priming the brain for all other addictions, a light bulb went off. It is her purpose and privilege to help others recover fully from all outlets of the deadly disease of addiction. She is the author of An Altered Spirit, The 12 Steps in Ebenezer Scrooge, which she donates all proceeds to the benefit of a place called First Step Home. As co-founder of SugarX Global, Anna helped develop a system based on CARE, which stands for Connection, Action Steps, Recovery Protection, and Education, as the foundation for addicts to grow recovery. Her Sugar Addict solution is an easy 3-step approach to help steer you from active addiction and into a progressive solution. It allows you to transform. It's her purpose and her privilege to help others recover from addiction. And you are able to reach out to her, and I will give more of her contact information throughout the show, but you can check out what she's got going on with her company at sugarxglobal.com. Having said that, Anna, welcome to the Know You're Crazy show. I am super excited to have you.
I'm excited to be here. It's really good to see you.
I know it hasn't been that long. For those of you, none of you really know probably, but Anna and I had the opportunity to connect at a recent coaching summit, as we are both high performance coaches. And ironically, Anna is from Nebraska, and we had connected through networking on a Zoom call during COVID, where we realized that she had gone to a school in North Platte, Nebraska, where I was raised. And it was just this irony that we both understood that connection. And so here we are, probably a year later or 2, I don't even know, actually on a podcast. And now we get to discuss your specialty, which is sugar addiction. So I'm just going to let you take it from here. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your story, how all this transformed for you. And yeah, let's go.
Well, I grew up in San Francisco, California, and I was born in 1965, right in the heyday of the Haight-Ashbury, peace, love, hippie movement, drugs, sex, you name it. And I literally lived right up the street from Hippie Hill. So my mom took us every day to Hippie Hill entrance of Golden Gate Park on Haight-Ashbury, because that was the closest entrance to the park. And so I grew up with all this music in the background and people smoking pot and this and that and everything else. And so when I was 9 years old, I tried drugs for the first time. I smoked a joint with somebody, and it was just kind of like a little thing for a while. But by the time I was 13, I was absolutely a full-blown addict. Mm-hmm. And I got kicked out of high school when I was 14. I went to San Mateo High School, and I remember getting a joint laced with PCP. And I literally it's a dissociative drug. And I got up out of class and I walked out of the classroom because I felt confined and hot and whatever. And I started walking out the door and down the street to where these railroad tracks were. And I didn't do it on purpose, but I literally just couldn't go on anymore. And I laid my head down on the railroad tracks. I just happened to lay my head down there. And I remember seeing a train coming towards my head and thinking, you know what, Anna, you're going to die. And almost just like an observation, I was so disassociated and I couldn't get up. And literally this man walked up to me with a long black trench coat, long black beard, hat, long hair, and he lifted me up off of those tracks. And today I realize, as a mature woman, he could have done anything he wanted to me and he didn't. He kept me safe and he got me home. He actually rode on the bus with me all the way to my home, made sure I got off the bus safely. And on the way, he wrote me a poem that I still have. And even then, with that level of unmanageability, I didn't know what addiction was. It wasn't something that was talked about, right? So I just thought it was some kind of close call. I got something laced. It wasn't my fault, but it didn't stop me from, doing dangerous things. And so I think one thing that needs to be understood about addiction is we lose control and we continue to use despite harm, right? Despite harm to ourselves. So anyway, by the time I was almost 17, my mom was like, why don't you move to North Platte and go to beauty school? Your Aunt Linda, runs a school with her sister-in-law there. And so that's how I ended up at the North Platte Beauty Academy in North Platte. And
the humor in that, which would be humor between two recovered drug addict or alcoholics, which we are. So I'm a recovered alcoholic and done plenty of drugs in my day. But the humor in that we would find within our community is your beauty school was right next to the bar that I practically was raised in by my mother, Platt Bar. And we, and that was the irony when we got to talk. It was like, oh my goodness, you know about the Platt Bar. I mean, it just brought back so many
and it's
memories.
Crazy. I mean, I got to our hotel room and within, by the next morning, we just felt like we knew each other forever. It was just nuts, right? I mean, we have so much in common besides just addiction, being focused on growth, being focused on personal development, and that kind of thing is so important to both of us, to be in a continuous growth pattern in our lives and to be seekers and to improve our processes and how we live and how we show up for life is so important. And I think that that's something that's incredibly valuable to a recovering addict, right? Is because when you get this pain that forces you into change, something happens, right? Something happens, because the alternative is you either stay the same or all of a sudden you're willing to take healthy risks. And it's very scary to go through that process of change. And my Aunt Linda pushed me through that door, right? Because she said, you're not going to behave this way in my home. You're not going to do this here. Because I got sent to Nebraska without instructions and I was absolutely out of control. Out of control. My drug of choice was yours. If it would change the way I felt, I would use it. And so
I love that. My drug of choice was yours. Yeah, such a true. I'd never heard that before until we were recently together at the coaching summit when you had made that comment. And there is so much satisfaction in being seekers of self-development. And the irony in many of us who have recovered, once we get a taste of what it is to recover, and then we understand what you feel like when you continue to seek recovery in whatever area of your life that is, there's that natural human, in my opinion. I mean, that's what we're here for. We're here to continually to evolve. And with being a recovered alcoholic myself, once you hit that bottom, and some people will hit bottom, whether it's in a professional setting or whatever, but with the role of addiction and alcoholism and how much it will absolutely take your soul, your mentality, your emotions. I mean, it'll take you to the core. And if you are lucky enough to pull up out of addiction, make that point. If you are lucky enough to have somebody, an angel or even a person, find you on the tracks when you're ready to just end it all. And then you take that incident or that situation, and you actually use it down the road to get clean and sober. I mean, we lose so many who are unable to make that step. But once you get a taste of that freedom, man, the passion just kicks in and you get hungry. I knew we were going to be a hit when you walked in that door. You'd missed one flight and you came in late, and you said, and it was probably black or something in the room. And I can't remember what I said, but you were like, oh, I sleep as if it's a job. And I thought, oh, she's my favorite roommate. She sleeps like it's a job, which means that she likes it pitch black. She likes it cold. You had all your, things that you were doing, and I had my stuff that I brought. And it's like, you're with community in the same mindset when you're all like, yeah, this is the setup so that I can have optimal health to the best of my ability today.
Absolutely.
I mean, really. And that's why I'm so excited to have you, because whether or not somebody's in recovery from alcohol or typical, what someone would categorize drug addiction, sugar is everywhere.
Right.
And I mean,
And
even
so,
even
what we do is we
yeah.
switch addictions, right? So I went to my first meeting and I met a man there who was 13 years older than me, and he became my new drug of choice. And I ended up getting pregnant, and I ended up in California. And I'm going to fast forward to, I'm sitting there pregnant. I find out that my ex-husband is back on dope, and he's literally banging cocaine, so he's shooting up drugs. And I'm 18 years old and I'm pregnant, and I'm in Los Angeles, California, and I'm like, I need something. And I don't want to use because I know I have a baby that I'm growing. And I know some women do use during their pregnancy. And you know what? I'm not comparing myself to you. I did use, I just switched addictions, right? Yeah. So I ate a 1 pound bag of powdered sugar mixed with water, Susan.
Wow.
Now, I would be ashamed to do that in front of someone. And I swear to God, if there would have been a couple more bags of powdered sugar, I would have eaten them too. Yeah. Because my brain's reward center was dying for a hit. And I believe
Tell me about that.
Used to feel normal. They don't use to feel to really get high. It's because our dopamine reward center has been hijacked. So years later, and fast forwarding to like about maybe 7 years ago, I'm clean. I don't smoke. I eat mostly like primally paleo aligned, right? I take care of business, but every once in a while I dip into the treats and I can't stop. And I hear this lady, Benton Johnson, talking about addiction, and she's a recovering alcoholic, and she used to smoke and this, that, and the other thing. And she said addiction is one disease with many outlets, but the first outlet and the gateway drug is sugar. And so I reached out to her, and she did this sugar tool on me, and it's literally a diagnostic tool for sugar addiction. And I'm certified to do these. And it's amazing to do one of these because you see, when was your first symptom of active addiction? And for me, it was 3 years old. My first memory of having to have something so bad that I had to get it. I climbed up on the counter to eat Johnson's baby aspirin at 3 years old. And I knew it was medicine. So I remember looking over my shoulder. I remember being scared of getting caught, right? And this is what addicts do, right? There's a lot of guilt and shame and hiding and covering your tracks involved with addiction. So that was my very first symptom of addiction. And by the time I was about 12 years old, I was absolutely a full-blown addict. And basically, it doesn't matter what the substance is. What makes you an addict isn't the substance. That's why some people can use a substance for even quite some time and they can quit and they're not an addict. They're like, whoa, what the hell was I doing, right? What makes an addict is what happened inside the brain. It's a brain disease, not a substance problem. So the brain is always going to look for an outlet. It's going to look for a fix, especially if you don't have a way of dealing with life on life's terms that works for you, right? That you learn to become content and you learn to live peaceably in your own skin, right? Be comfortable in your own skin and all of these kinds of things, and get some strength in community and have some action steps that you take purposefully in order to feed your growth, right? And to feed your transformation.
Yeah, totally. And I was thinking, because, as you're telling your story, one of the things that's gone through my mind is, once you discovered that, and she gave you that test and you realize, sugar is the gateway drug. And then how many years ago was that?
I think it was about 7 years ago now.
So 7 years ago, and now you have a very successful company, Sugar X
Sugar
Global.
X Global, yes.
Sugar X Global, where you are helping thousands of people overcome their sugar addiction. And one of the things when we set up this interview, I got to read your ebook about the 3 easy steps. And I really love the way you simplify it, because what it reminded me of is that for those of us early in recovery, and anybody who's asking themselves today, I have a sugar problem. And what ironic timing, because whether or not we want to agree with the new year being the time to change stuff up, it is a tradition for many, many people to take a look and reflect from the one year and going into the next. And so if food is on your 2023 goal list, then this is a great show for you, because where was I going with that? So once you start realizing, the sugar is an addiction, and you get these 3 easy steps, which I would say really work well to start breaking them into it, because I know you get into all kinds of things with the community and all of that, but for the newcomer, see those of you who haven't been in the rooms or raised around recovery, but you're like, I might be addicted to this. If this is resonating with you, we like to call you folks newcomers. So when you're a newcomer, you're brand new to understanding how your body's operating. And so there's going to be like this huge download of awareness. And sometimes that can feel really overcoming. And so it's overwhelming. And so it's important that there's baby steps involved in simplicity, right?
Absolutely.
And so if you wouldn't mind kind of going into those 3 easy steps, as if you're talking to a newcomer, what kind of things, is important to know, and that.
Well, I think, let me start with something called the S uncope. And this is the uncope has traditionally been used to screen for addiction with alcohol and drugs, right? Mm-hmm. So what Dave, one of my business partners, and Bitten Johnson did was they moved it over for sugar, so that you could see and when I say sugar, I'm talking about carbohydrates. Okay. So I'm talking about,
thank you. Yeah.
I'm talking about potato chips, potatoes, French fries, pizza. Because a lot of people hear, well, I don't like sweet things. I like savory things. Well, some of these grains turn to sugar in your blood faster than a straight piece of candy. It's just crazy how it breaks down. And it has to do with glucose content. And then you've got fructose, which is incredibly psychoactive. You can literally see changes on MRI in the brain that literally mirror cocaine use or any other alcohol or anything in the brain.
Wow.
What sugar and fructose does to your brain. So the first one is unplanned use. Have you ever eaten or used something? Have you eaten something when you said, I'm not going to eat like that today? Like maybe this time of year, you notice, I'll stop on the first, I'll stop on the second, I'll stop when the leftovers are gone. And then you can't stop, right? So it's unplanned use. You're planning on not using and you use it anyway, right? And maybe you spend more time thinking about it than you should. Neglected. Have you ever neglected any daily responsibilities so you could eat? Right. And I know people have done that, and people have done that with alcohol, of course, historically. I know people who they were supposed to be a bridesmaid in a wedding and they couldn't make themselves show up because of their way they felt about themselves because of their addiction. Have you felt you wanted to cut down on your eating or using? Now, most people that are alcoholics or addicts, and like I said, addiction is one disease. So if there's anything you felt like you've needed to cut down on, that's a clue that might be addictive for you. So that might be gaming or even social media, right? Shopping. Has anyone ever objected, or would they if they saw how you were eating? So a lot of people answer no, but when they really think about it, do you think someone would object to me mixing a whole 1 pound bag of powdered sugar with water and eating it if they saw me, right? So that question, you should answer it in that way. If people saw you sneaking that ice cream out of the fridge, if they saw you taking out of the trash what you just trashed.
Or if they heard the silent way you're talking to yourself about the way you ate, because let's admit it, when there's a problem, you can go through some periods, or there's an addiction, you can go through some periods where maybe you can have 1 or 2, but the self-talk is where the crazy's at. The self-talk is, I made only 2 today. And so I'm feeling proud about myself. And then you go on about your day, but the next day, now you're into 5 or 6. And then the self-talk that nobody hears, I remember even when I got sober, my ex-husband and I got sober at the same time, and he had a horrendous rock bottom. I mean, we both did, but his was like the kind that would probably make headlines type of deal, right? And so a lot of people, assume that I didn't have a problem because his was so much louder than mine or visual than mine. But what you didn't see or what you didn't hear was what was behind closed doors in the evenings when
Right.
I couldn't stop drinking, or I was hiding the wine behind the sugar canister, or you know where I'm going, or the
It's
waiting for everything to settle
absolutely
down. Yeah, I
insides,
mean,
insides. It's
yeah,
not
I mean, I
about
was I
outside.
was the one who drank during the pregnancy. Like that
Right.
was me with my oldest for I think I made it one trimester before I started sipping wine and justifying it and all this stuff that we do. And so
Right.
like I get that crazy behind all of that. And so you're right. So it's like, what's the hidden way that you're talking to yourself, that you're feeling about yourself, even if you tend to do maybe one or two one day, but that's been going on for a while.
Right. And it's the preoccupation, which is really what you're talking about. So even during your first trimester, I bet you were preoccupied with alcohol. When am I going to be able
Obsession.
to drink? When can I drink? When can I
Yeah.
have it? I would eat breakfast and I would think, what's for lunch, right? Before I even finish breakfast, I call it my food
Yep.
mosquito, right? What can I eat? When
Oh,
can I eat it? How can, so we
yeah.
spend a lot of time thinking about using and thinking about ways and means to use, right? Whatever it is.
Obsession. The
Sugar,
obsession.
food, gambling, sex,
Yep.
alcohol, it doesn't matter. And then emotional discomfort. Do you
Mhm.
feel ashamed? Do you feel really heavy? Do you feel, do you use to try to alleviate feelings of emotional discomfort, to change how you feel, right? There's this great clip of Eric Clapton from 60 Minutes from 1999, and Ed Bradley asks him, so, uh, so heroin was your first drug of choice? And he says, oh, no, 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 it was sugar. And he basically goes on to say it was
Yeah.
sugar any way I could cram it down my throat because it changed the way I felt, right?
Yep.
So addicts, our brain, it's because of the early and chronic exposure to sugars. It rewires our brain and we have this euphoric recall and we know it's going to make us feel good for a minute. And we break that system because we keep pushing on the pleasure too hard. And so now pain goes up, right? What goes up must come down. So we're high for a minute and now pretty soon we can't get high. We can't get high. We can't find that right combination or the right amount or the right, whatever. And this is where the pain becomes so great that the addict's like, something's wrong. Maybe I need help.
One of the things, with the name of my show, Emotional Recovery in the Raw, I always like to kind of point out the subtlety with which the pain in which we live in emotionally that some people don't always pick up on. Like, for example, not everybody's probably suffering from sugar addiction, but boy, it is a pretty prominent topic. And how many people actually go through this every day and they don't talk about it? They just don't talk about it, right? And there's and you've got something in your 3 easy steps. I think it's the third one about beliefs, if I remember correctly.
Yes. So really, I mean, this is a triangle of how to get out of the food, right? So there are psychoactive substances that we believe no one should be eating. And we base this on science, right? We know that there are opioids in grains. We know that grains demineralize your bones. They're not super nutrient dense. When they said, healthy whole grains are, they call them healthy whole grains, they're comparing them to white grains. But if you compare healthy whole grains to a Snickers bar, they're going to compare pretty closely.
Wow.
So if you compare healthy whole grains to a piece of meat, the meat's going to win hands down, right? You compare it to broccoli's going to win hands down. So the way they market to us makes us think we're eating something healthy, but it's not. So I would recommend a book like Grain Brain or Wheat Belly. Those are two great books to learn how the disturbing real truth about grains and how harmful they can be to you psychoactively, right? Sugars, there's over 200 names, Susan, for sugar. Wow. So if it has a label, you're probably getting sugar. And so we want to eliminate those. And we also want to eliminate unnatural fats. And these are fats that were used for industrial things like machine lubricants and household lighting, right? When we used to have lights that you burned an oil lamp. And they
Oh,
wanted to, they wanted to, what they did was they bleached and deodorized these, and they're very unstable. And so it's not just that they're high in omega-6s and they're inflammatory, but they're very unstable. And so these unstable oils cause poor health. And some of them contain endocannabinoid type chemical to them that triggers you to want to eat more. It's like if you did cannabis, right? If you smoked a joint and you get the munchies. And so they're going to make you eat more. And this toxic triangle, these are the three things that all junk food is made out of, right? There's no such thing as junk food without unnatural fats, flours, and sugar.
so okay, so folks, I hope you're listening to this. This is why I had Ann on the show. She's a wonderful influence on me. I love the education that she brings. We are going to go to a very quick break before we can't, because I will just keep talking with her because I just find it so interesting. And so hang in there, because when we come back, we're going to be talking more about what she's educating you on right now, a little bit more about solution and whatever else comes up for us today. So, all right, be back shortly. Hey everyone, this is Susan Denee. Welcome back to the Know You're Crazy talk show, where you are listening to emotional recovery in the raw. Today's recovery, we are talking specifically about sugar addiction, and my special guest, Anna Fruehling with Sugar X Global, is here to talk about what's going on within the body, the obsession, the addiction to the brain, all of the above. If you are joining us today, she has some simple solutions to get you started. And not only that, but her company specializes in helping folks make a complete turnaround. And actually, Anna, before we end the show today, I want to make sure that you're able to share some of the success stories that you've had in your community online, because it's really quite impressive. But I'm actually just going to turn it over to you. I think we were ending the last right before break. We were talking about the chemicals and grains
Right.
and so I do have a question around that. So would you say that, now that like I'm gluten free now, and a lot of people are eating less and less gluten. Do you think that's part of the reason is because they're unable to digest all the toxins and what's going on
Oh
and what's
no,
not
I
even
think
wheat
that
anymore?
I think that if you look back historically and you look back to the advent of agriculture, that's really the advent of modern disease. So prior to that time, there are no, you can't find bones with dental caries. You can't find bones with arthritis. You don't find stunting, which is, the inability to grow properly and that kind of thing. So we traded our nomadic life and our hunter-gatherer life for the convenience and the modernity of being able to stay in one place, which of course allowed us to develop, I'm living in a house now. I'm not taking a tent or a shack around with me all over the place or whatever. So, I mean, it afforded us a great deal of wonderful things, but at the same time, it derailed our health big time. So I don't think grains in any way, shape, or form are healthy for most people, especially sugar addicts, though, because they process in sugar in your body. And in fact, alcohol is usually a liquid grain or a fermented fruit, right? So both of these things have a lot of sugar in them. So the next thing is, thinking about so we have the what not to eat at the base, and then there's your health issues and your health concerns, and some of those concerns are there might be foods that trigger you specifically. And so dairy is questionable. Dairy is full of opioids. I mean, a baby cow gets sleepy, and any nursing mother knows you put your baby to the breast and you just watch them and they're like milk drunk, right? Because there's opioids in dairy. So you might eat some dairy and you'll want more dairy, right? And you'll be thinking about food more. So if that's a trigger food for you, or if you have sensitivities to your lactose intolerance, so health issues are another reason why you would remove foods from your food plan, or you're autoimmune like I am. And so there are a lot of vegetables that you maybe want to stay away from, especially nightshades. And there might be other vegetables that you find you're better off without because they have chemicals in them that can react with your gut and can react with your joints and things like that. So it's a matter of experimentation once you remove that bottom layer. But that's the most important thing to do, right? Is stop the known psychoactive substances. And then your beliefs. So one of my business partners practices kosher. And so of course she's going to eat in a kosher lifestyle. I hate liver. One of my preferences and my beliefs is don't eat anything that you don't enjoy. And you were with me for, almost a week.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the food I ate. I had nice juicy hamburgers, I ate things I enjoyed eating. And then any other beliefs that you might have, that go into making your own personalized food plan. And I call it a food plan and not a diet, because diets don't work. They have a 95% failure rate. And if you don't achieve satiety, you aren't going to heal. So your body, you can't outsmart your body. Your body needs nutrients, and you're going to then be able to repair things like leptin, which is a hormone that tells you I'm full. And it's usually broken when you're insulin insensitive, right? So you don't have insulin sensitivity because you've eaten too much sugar. And so you have hyperinsulinemia, and that means you have too much insulin circulating in your body, and your cells kind of go like the boy that cried wolf. We don't hear you. We're not, and we're not answering to you. And anytime you're insulin, so anybody who say you've been told you have metabolic syndrome, then you're in that boat, right? And I think for a lot of people, they treat obesity, or they treat metabolic syndrome, or they treat diabetes, or they treat high blood pressure with the wrong thing. If they were screened for addiction, they would treat that primary illness and everything else would be easier. And I'm saying this as a person that was a primal health coach for years, and I helped people resolve health issues and change their diet and lifestyle, only to watch many of them go back, because I didn't know about sugar addiction, and I didn't know that, they were going to get pulled back because we were treating the wrong thing. We were treating something secondary to addiction.
Gotcha. And wish, because when you talk about the carbohydrates, not sugar, I mean, there is both, but carbohydrates being, another way to digest all the sugar. And I mean, I'll guarantee you that's where I'll go off. I'll go off on potato chips, right? Immediate, if I get going, that's going to be the way. I remember during COVID, they had bean chips out. Oh my goodness. I was a bean chip addict, and I knew it. It was horrible.
Judy calls it crunch and munch and mush and push, right?
Yeah.
So there's this drive to survive. And so we essentially have three brains stacked up on each other. We have our brain stem, which is really like that's like the base brain, right? It just helps you breathe. It regulates your blood pressure. It keeps you alive, right? It keeps your heart beating. And then you've got this reward center brain, and this is where your emotions live, right? And these emotions aren't something you can control. If you step out into the street and a car comes whirring by, you're going to feel that sense of fear, and you're meant to, so that you can have a quick burst of energy, which, you get a release of cortisol, a release of insulin, and your blood sugar comes into play, and you're able to sprint away from that car, right? So it's really survival driven. And this part of our brain is the hunter-gatherer part of our brain. So I say addicts are the people that would have kept the tribe alive. We would have gotten up in the morning and we would have been like, let's go. I know where the berries were. Let's go hunt. Let's go, let's go gather. And then we would come home and we would prepare the food and we would party and we would have sex and have babies. And we're why the human race has survived. But now bring us here where it's too easy to survive, right? I don't even have to leave my house, Susan. I could have anything I want delivered. In fact, my neighbors across the street every single night get DoorDash. I swear to God, they do not cook. Wow. And they have little kids, and every single person in that family is obese. And it's so sad to me, but that's how easy it is to survive. So to hunt and gather is easy. And I think we may have derived a lot more satisfaction by putting a great deal of effort into it. And I think that we don't have that same contentment with the way we hunt and gather now. It's like,
well, isn't it interesting? Because when we were on break, I was talking about, the third, and we were talking about beliefs, and you were talking, and then you were sharing your the beliefs around, religious and the different types of foods that fall within that. And where I was coming from the emotional, recovery side or thinking side, was the beliefs within the home. The justifications that go on, like, well, am I ever going to be able to, I can hear my husband right now. Am I ever going to be able to enjoy anything ever again? And because there's established beliefs and justifications that we will do in order to get what we want. And I
Right.
guess it will always come down to, you'll know if you're enjoying the food based on what are the inside stories or feelings you're telling yourself afterwards. And that was that silent, what people are not seeing or what people are not hearing from you as far as your gauge. Is this a food I enjoy, or is this a food that I'm shaming myself on?
And I
And
think
it's
though
really
too,
interesting.
it's even deeper than that, because some foods are just truly psychoactive,
Yeah.
right? We can see on brain scans that they change the brain. And so
Yes.
that's all there is to it, right? They're just psychoactive. Like they're going to change the way you feel and the way you act.
And would
So
that be
you think about
would that be somewhere where like cravings start coming into play when the
oh
brain's no
yes,
longer having the
cravings are physical, and they're your brain's reward center trying to balance itself out. So like I said earlier, when the dopamine goes up, it's going to come crashing down, and the more you press that lever to get that pleasure and that dopamine raises, your brain is protecting itself, because you can't have a high dopamine state like that all the time. So think about early love, right? Do you know how crazy that feels?
Yeah.
You remember how crazy it
Oh
felt to
yeah.
be in love with your husband. You couldn't stop
Oh
thinking
yeah.
about him. You could barely function, right? So can you imagine if you were that high all the time? Your brain can't handle it. And so it literally, the receptors shut off. So the dopamine receptors shut off in your brain so that you can't feel the dopamine. So now you're pain, pain, pain. And no matter how much you use, your brain is like the boy that cried wolf, right? I'm not listening to you anymore. You come around all the time. You're not serious. I'm not having it. And so you literally have broken the reward center. But whatever tracks you've grooved into your brain around addiction, they don't go away. Just like if you know how to ride a bike, you're not going to unlearn how to ride a bike. If you brush your teeth with your right hand, you're not going to just, even if you couldn't brush your teeth with your right hand for 10 years for some reason, you would still be able to 10 years later. So
Yeah.
you've got to do some neuroplasty. You've got to rewire your brain. You've got to make a bypass from this part of your brain to this part of your brain. And this is what separates us from the rest of the animal kingdom, right? Is we have this fabulous frontal lobe. Problem is, it's quiet because it's not survival oriented. It's the creative part of our brain. It's the brain that can help us problem solve, but it can get hijacked by the reward center to help us manufacture reasons why we should keep using, right? The stories that you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we feel like we don't want to eat. We know we're having a problem, right? Or we don't want to use that drug. We know we have a problem, but then but and all of a sudden we have this little story about, well, how we can use one more time. And
So tell me, with your company, I know that community is a real big piece of that, bringing people together so that they can talk and share. And you and I are used to that same world, likely, recovery meetings where, fortunately, it's just such a fantastic formula to recover. How is it watching individuals who maybe didn't come from a drug addict, alcoholic background, but for the first time awakening that they're sugar addicts, and then they find themselves, I would probably guess they eventually find themselves comfortable talking within a community setting about all these experiences. I mean, the light bulb moments have just got to be flying off. I mean, how is that? Is that
it's
for
amazing.
you? Yeah.
And what we do is different because of that model care that you read, when we first came on. And so we do a lot of action planning, action steps. We do a lot of recovery protection, which is our twist on relapse prevention, where we feel a good offense is way better than a defense. Like, don't wait until you have a lapse, because sugar is surround sound. It's 24/7. You've got food porn, you've got food pushers. Bet you can't eat just one. You were talking about potato chips. You've got the bliss point. That's a real thing. It's a scientific thing where they try to make foods have a mouth feel, just enough salt, just enough sweet, just enough savory to make you continue to want to eat that, right? So your brain lights up. In fact, I use a video to show people of a little girl having her first taste of ice cream, and you just see her brain light up like the 4th of July, and you can see how psychoactive these foods are. But we get numb to them. So as we continue to use them, we have to use more than we used to use, right? Just like with drugs and alcohol, sex addiction, any other addiction. And so what I see is we have members that have dealt with addiction for years. We have members that have been clean and sober from drugs and alcohol for decades that come to us and are like, oh my gosh, this is life changing, right? To get off of the rest of the I've quit smoking, I've done this, I've done that. I didn't know that this was keeping it alive, right? And they were doing binging and restricting and over exercising and all this stuff, trying to control the sugar.
Oh, can you say those symptoms again? Because that was really good. You said they're binging, they're what oh, you just listed off like 3 or 4, I mean, like huge on symptoms. I mean, because when I'm around
binging,
a woman community,
restricting,
restricting,
over exercising, diet of the week, these are all attempts to control something that's out of control, right? The food, your cravings, you're trying to get a handle on them. So some of the worst addicts I've ever dealt with have never been obese. But you can see when I do a sugar on them, I can see, okay, so you were anorexic when you were 13. When you went to college, that was resolved, but now it's bulimia, right? And now you're a full-grown adult, and it's no longer bulimia, but it's exercise anorexia, where you go crazy if you miss your workout, and you've got to get all your steps in, and you have to, so the obsession and compulsion just keeps shifting. That's why I say addiction is one disease with many outlets. And I think it's super important to bring up that addiction is a disease, not a decision. Don't make a decision to become an addict. And if you can see that your first symptom was super, super early, like I can, then there's no way you can blame yourself. And so I think people should be able to talk about addiction like they talk about
I do too.
Having migraine headaches or having a broken bone,
I'm right there with you. Yeah, totally comfortable talking about that. And I've always been super open about my own recovery, just because I don't think there should be any shame around it. And in whatever form it's coming, right? And I think once you connect to that honesty as an individual, and you come into some humility around your own addictions and your own problems, you begin to have such a compassion and understanding for other people. It's not to say that other people's personality traits might become annoying every now and then, but once you connect deeply in the center of your soul with your own recovery and that humility kicks in, how can you not understand other people? And I think that's really, that's that cement that really connects a lot of us, where we can sit here on a show and you can tell a story about having your head on the tracks, and I can tell a story about using alcohol during a pregnancy, and we are completely at peace with what we've done with our lives and how we've overcome that. Right. That is such a powerful cement that solidifies us. And so that's why I was thinking, for your community within the sugar addiction, that must be a really tight community. And people probably really connect under this, because you are right. Food's everywhere.
I cannot even tell you how much I love our community. We have all kinds of people in our community. We have people from all over the world, and we have people from all walks of life. We have doctors, we have psychologists, psychiatrists, we have business women. And it's so funny because, all these people, they can do all of these things, but there's just this one thing, right, that they have no control over. And it's amazing. What I love seeing is when they realize that the food and the eating is just a symptom of the brain problem. And so we have to do a dopamine fast, right? We have to get off of all of these things in order to let that reward center truly repair. So, what was happening for me was I wasn't eating gluten because I had celiac. So for years, I haven't had gluten for 13, 14, 15 years. I don't remember when I got diagnosed exactly, but I haven't had it forever. But I would have gluten-free goodies, and I would tap into that, and all of a sudden I would be out of control with them,
Yeah.
I might not lose control, but for weeks afterwards, I'd be feeling like I want something.
Yeah.
My discontent would come back. So it's kind of like, an alcoholic can't have a beer on the weekends. Well, a
Mm,
sugar addict can't have, there's no safe amount for a sugar addict either. An addiction is
yeah.
an addiction, and abstinence is the ticket that gets you into the show. And
Yeah.
recovery is a verb. It's not something that you can just sit down and, okay, I stopped eating the food and I'm good. No, recovery is what happens after you stop doing the thing. That
I
is
really, in the whole world, I mean, the thing about it is, like, I'll listen to the Sean Stevenson show, or I'll listen to, Dr. Amen or whatever. I mean, the whole world is awakening to the fact that we have been damaging our bodies and what we have been putting into it. And we are awakening, we're awakened to it. And when you go into the insulin resistance, and then we're talking about healthy fats, when we went through our phase of, don't eat fat. And I mean, we're really coming full circle. And I think the service that you're offering with folks right now is really paramount to not only kick a sugar addiction or a carbohydrate addiction, but to really learn how to eat again, learn how to appreciate the body again, learn how to
right. And
listen.
I'll tell you though, you would be
Listen.
amazed how little we talk about food.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah. See this.
nothing to talk about. Here's what to talk about. This is what you don't eat.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the when we what we really talk about once someone is out of the food is restriction, because what we notice is people can't let go of that diet mentality. So I had a
Mm,
client who was restricting so bad, and her obesity doctor sent her to us, and she was restricting, and so she ended up binging, and then she lied to her doctor because she didn't know what was happening to her. And she literally had so much fat around her lungs that she could barely breathe. Like she was going to
oh,
die from eating
mm,
herself to death, quite literally. And she had quit alcohol as a teen, realizing that she couldn't handle it. She was off to the races as soon as she had her first taste. And she had that niggling suspicion that food was the same way for her, especially these processed foods. So anyway, so she comes to me, and her hemoglobin A1C had been creeping back up, and all this stuff had been happening. And I put her on basically a reverse diet. I told her to eat tons of protein, lots of fat, 3 meals a day. And for the first few weeks, I said, I don't even care if you eat between meals, just get off of those foods. So
yeah.
then about a month or two later, she's down to 3 meals a day. And she said for the first time in her life, she's not white knuckling it, right? It's not a
Mm,
challenge to stay out of the food. So she goes to her doctor and she said, I was disappointed because I didn't lose any weight. And I said, yeah. I said, did you measure like I asked you to? And she started laughing and she said, oh my God, Anna, I lost 10 inches
wow.
from one appointment to another. And it was because body recomposition, right? So she gained muscle and
Mm,
she lost fat, not to mention
wow.
her hemoglobin A1C is down to 5.1, right? And
Wow.
she can breathe better and she can move better. And so we get so caught up on like a number on the scale and all of this stuff that's not
Hmm.
scientific, that doesn't matter. You can be skinny fat. You can be
Yeah.
what's called a TOFI, which is thin on the outside and fat on the inside. And that's no good. That's a metabolic time bomb waiting to go off. So what you want is you want good body composition. And so you want to lose fat, not muscle. And so we definitely talk about prioritizing protein and not restricting. It's better to get to where you want to be slowly over time, because the racing has never worked. I know women that dieted their way up to 300 pounds, right?
Mm,
My business partner was on a medically induced liquid diet, you
wow.
know, and they kept trying to treat her with moderation, all things in moderation, all things in moderation. And
Yeah.
it just about killed her.
Yeah. So, all right. So we've got 3 minutes before the show wraps, but I do want to hit on this. So when you're talking about eating fast, we're talking about healthy fast. We're talking about olive oil, avocado oil, coconut oil, and then the
Animal
bad,
fats,
what's that?
animal fats.
Animal fats. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. I really enjoyed traveling with you. And I think you are somebody who you walk the talk. I mean, being around you was motivating for me. And just watching how you eat and what you don't eat. And it was really, and we had fantastic meals. but it really was something to witness up front with how your lifestyle is and what you choose to put in your body today, and just the turnaround that you yourself have experienced with autoimmune disease and everything else. And so for anyone who's listening right now, Anna's company does some amazing work with individuals. They can reach you, it looks like, at hello@Sugar X Global. Is that right? I'm seeing that on next to your name. Okay.
Hello,
and then
sugarxglobal.com. I forgot to put the .com on the end of it.
All right. So sugarxglobal.com. You can reach Anna, and she's got fantastic programs out there for you to be part of if sugar addiction is something that's been haunting you for a while and you'd like something to do about it. On my front, I've got a couple things going on. One, at some point in the month of January, I'm going to be launching a monthly coaching group for anybody who's looking to ignite their sobriety. So for those of you folks who've been sober for a while and you're looking, it's kind of gotten a little bit dull. Maybe you've been drowned in emotionalism. Maybe you've been wallowing in self-despair. I don't know, but you're looking to kick it up. I'm going to be hosting a group monthly call. There will be a fee to this. There'll be one meeting a month for 12 months. If you're interested, you can reach out to me at growthspurt@susandenee.com. You can also get there through my website. The other thing is I'm hosting free coaching this Sunday at 11 a.m. No, Saturday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time for relationship communication. Often our relationships start going down when our communication breaks down. I will be covering things like behaviors within the relationship that cause communication to break down. And I'm going to be adding some scripting, some simple tools that you can learn how to rephrase in your relationship so that you can have some open communication and ignite it. So if you're going into 2023 and you're asking yourself, God, I might need to get a divorce, you might want to tune in for some free coaching on Saturday, because it might be just a communication problem. So anyways, Anna, thank you so much for being on the show today. Super, super excited to have you. We will have you back. I'd love to have you back again, because it's such a great conversation to have. And thank you for being honest and vulnerable with your share. So much appreciated. It helps so many people out there. It's one of the things I treasure. And so for everybody else, have a blessed evening. Thank you for joining us, and take care. You have been listening to Know You're Crazy.
Crazy.
And my name is Susan Denee. We are identifying, understanding, and treating your crazy one episode at a time. Tune in to transformationtalkradio.com. To connect with me or Growth Spurt Your Life, please visit susandenee.com. That's Susan Denee, DENEE.com.